Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome to Manders Mindset, where we explore the power of shifting your mindset to shift your life. I'm your host, Amanda Russo, and I am here today with Leslie Urbas, and she is a registered dietitian and personal trainer with over 15 years experience. And she loves to help women like herself by overcoming selfless, overachieving tendencies and finally fully embracing themselves using what she calls digestion codes. And we're going to delve into what those are. Leslie and I first got connected because I was seeking guests who have followed along with Rachel Hollis and whose growth journey has also been shaped by Rachel. And delve into Leslie's story and how Rachel has impacted her. And I am here with Leslie today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I love the topic.
Of course. So who would you say Leslie is at the core?
That's a great question. Funny enough, it's really been what I've been exploring these past few days because I was taught as a child my self-worth, the way that I viewed the world and took in the world told me that my self-worth was based on how much money you made in corporation with a good job. Did your job require a lot of hard work? Were you doing a good job? Were you recognized as a good worker? Those two kind of they overlapped very much. And then how you looked physically, your body is an important thing. And last but not least, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the other one. So it must be a good sign that I'm moving away from it. But, if you were married, like if you had a boyfriend, if you were married, like your marital status, that kind of thing. And I was like, I know I've filled in the box because, as I love to say, I'm a recovering selfless overachiever of legitimately checking all the boxes that I thought mattered. And then sitting here one day and being like, this is it. This is really it. The boxes are checked and the things are done. And now what's next, right? It's led me to really think of who am I at the core? I'm reframing my own self-worth as it is now because, as you know, every so often you step into new awareness and you step into a new mindset and you revamp your life. And so truthfully, who I am at the core is a woman who just wants to be herself. I want to enjoy the things that I want to enjoy, not just ad lib like so many people say, well, I don't really care what others say. But you can almost tell how fast they say it and the way that they say it if they actually care or they don't care. If they're just ad libbing it. It's sort of like the positive vibes only thing. And I get that. But are you processing that sweeping it under the rug isn't actually changing your positive vibe, right? And so, truthfully, at my core, I am a lifelong learner. I am consciousness. I'm a part of God or universe or spirit, whoever you want to call it, who was put here to really help women feel comfortable in their bodies and discover who they are after accepting the physical form of who they are. And I'm a mom, which I will really say is truthfully me at my core. I love having children, even though that was a box I checked in the beginning. I truthfully love having my children, and I'm figuring it out every single day of who I am more and stepping more and more into who I was designed to be instead of who I have forced myself to become.
Okay, that's awesome. Can you take us down memory lane a little bit and tell us about your upbringing, family dynamic?
Yeah, sure. So, I grew up in the middle of America, St. Louis, Missouri. I had two older sisters and my parents both worked. My dad was like a baseball coach and a real estate person. My dad has definitely always lived a free-spirited life like myself. I'm going to have a job that's got that little bit of gray area of play. He coached baseball. So he played his dream. He taught his dream. And yeah, that meant some weekends he was working, but it also meant on a random Tuesday, he was taking the day off to go golf. He didn't have to go to work because he worked all weekend, right? And real estate in and of itself, you kind of create that. And even now in his 60s, he kind of creates his own life and does other little odds and end jobs that he loves. And he's about to be a referee for basketball for 50 years. So, yeah, I know it's like a big accomplishment to him. I'm like, this is fabulous. I love this dad. I seriously do, right? So he's always designed his own life. He's always had multiple jobs, but always something. It was definitely a passion of his. I don't think my dad ever did something that he absolutely dreaded. It wasn't like, I have to do this to make the money. This is hard work. My mom definitely was a little bit different. She worked for TWA, which was an airline back in I really want to say before the 2000s. I think they sold out before 2000 hit. I could be wrong, though. It could have been around that time. Then she worked for American for a little bit. And then she began working at a school. So my mom has always been like a typical 9-to-5 worker, which is fine. But she, always taught us the ethic of hard work and being a good worker and having reasons. I was the youngest. So my sister, who was 5 years older, my other sister was 3 years older. It was always them against me, So I learned from a young age, it was really just kind of me. Close friends, I had the little boy next door and we hung out from time to time, but it was always on his dime. When he wanted to, and I had to play what he wanted to play. If I didn't play what he wanted to play, I pretty much needed to leave because he would complain to his mom and his mom was like, play what he wants to play or go home. And I learned that I had to do what everybody else wanted to do in order for me to play. Same with my sisters, right? So quickly, I think as a child, I pretty much adapted to doing what everybody else wanted me to do to be accepted because nobody was ever joining me, right? And even in school, my high school reunion was literally this past Saturday. I didn't go because I'm in Spain and it's in St. Louis. But I literally thought about it from this perspective of even then, I was filling in boxes to try to fit into groups. And I never really fit into any group. I have 2 friends from high school that I pretty much still talk to occasionally, I don't have that. And it's not something that's there in any given period of my life. And I truly believe it's because I was always just trying to be like the group to fit in. And I didn't actually know how to express myself to fit in anywhere. Right? So that's like the true background. But the big things that really shaped, I think, who I was is that when I was 7 or 8 years old, I couldn't tell you because it was 2nd grade year of school. I was raised Catholic. And I remember the day we had to come back for confession. And my 2nd grade teacher said to all of us as we were standing in line getting ready to leave, "You are a sinner. You have been sinning for 8 years, 7, 8 years. You are going to confession tonight. You do not have nothing to say. Think about what to say and repent. You have a reason to repent." And I remember sitting there with a lump in my body for probably 3 hours in between leaving school to come back to do this confession and still love the priest. He was such a sweet little guy, but he gave me my penance and I went back to the pew and I did it. And I sat back down and I went, I feel no different. So I believed at that moment that I was a sinner. And my view of God, of the world, of the universe, of spirit was a God that was keeping a clipboard full of all the things I did wrong, right? There was no loving person in my mind. I was doing everything I possibly could not to go to hell, really. And that if I was late for church or if I didn't do this or if I didn't do that, I was like, he's tallying this up. How many tallies do I get, right? I don't really know how many tallies I'm going to get in this life. Then tack on there, that pretty much sums up, me in a nutshell. If I think about my younger years, it was always conforming to fit into the group and praying to God nobody figured out that I was still this sinner because I felt no different. No matter how many times they made us go to confession, nothing ever changed in me because I probably didn't really know the truth. And then I think the other big thing that forced me down the road was when I was a freshman in high school, my high school softball coach, within the first week of showing up to high school, told me that I was too fat to play varsity softball, even though I was a very normal, healthy BMI. And another girl told me that I was too fat to hang out with. So then became my obsession with weight. And truthfully, if I really were to think about it on all the ways of self-worth, me becoming working for money and a job was really me still conforming to these people, right? I had to conform to live like these people. And then with the weight thing, that was a part of it. That had to become part of my self-worth because people were choosing not to accept me to play on a team, not to accept to hang out with me based on my body size. And then really maybe the last one was when I first got into college, and at Thanksgiving, the day before I started my eating disorder, we were sitting at Thanksgiving, and the topic of conversation, because the majority of us now, of my cousins, were in college, was who had a boyfriend, who had a good job along with good college, and who had recently lost weight and looked so good. And I was like, okay, my name was brought up in none of those. I did have a boyfriend, but it wasn't serious. I did great in school, but I still kind of had the same job I had always had. And I definitely had not lost any weight. From all the issues I gained in high school, I actually gained 25 pounds through pressuring myself to lose so much weight. I went the opposite direction. So the next day I was like, that's it. I'm going to go eating disorder and go crazy in order to control, because I don't know how to become somebody in somebody else's eyes.
What type of eating disorder did you develop?
So I was studying to be a dietitian, right? Now, I had no nutrition classes yet, but that put it on the radar to have one. I have never understood how people could make them throw up. I know this isn't exactly the greatest topic on the podcast, but I could never do it. Like, even if I was so sick to my stomach from something I ate in high school or something, I couldn't do it. I'm like, how did
No, same.
I don't get it. So I became anorexic. I guess that's what you would term it. I ate 250 calories a day. I know from what it was. And I worked out for about 2 hours. I was caught pretty fast. So I gained about 25 pounds in high school, and I lost all 25 pounds. So I literally started the day after Thanksgiving. I won't forget. And before New Year's, my cousin had figured it out. My cousin and I were very close. We actually worked at Michael's together, which was the job I had at the time. And so when she figured out what I was doing, she told my mom. And when my mom confronted me in knowing I lost the weight, I was like, I do not have this. So I immediately stopped, because I was like, the worthiness factor in my brain, I couldn't go to this, because the thing, I had gotten to the thing I'm now talked about for being skinny. If I admit to this and I go to this thing, now this becomes a bad thing instead of a good thing. So I immediately stopped cold turkey. But yeah, 250 calories. And then, because I didn't know how to maintain it healthfully, I was like, I can't just go back to eating the way that I did before. So I took on excessive exercise, and I worked out about 3 to 4 hours a day for pretty much 10 years of my life.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, I started when I was 18. I stopped excessively exercising right after I turned 30, between 30 and 31, when I met my husband.
Wow, that's a long time.
I was crazy about it. Yeah.
I relate to a lot of what you said, though. I didn't track calories per se, but I developed an eating disorder myself, and I didn't want to approach it in terms of I'm not eating at all. So I was a vegetarian at the time. So it turned to, I'm going to eat green beans and I'm going to eat honeydew melon. So I'm still eating. It's not an eating disorder. And I kind of tricked myself into thinking it wasn't one. So I relate to a lot of what you just said there. Although 10 years is a long time. I developed the excessive exercise myself because you think that's going to help drop the weight. How'd you get out of that, though?
That's a great question. I'd love to say I developed self-worth, but in knowing my journey, that wasn't it at all. I checked a different box. In my whole stem of excessively exercising, of making sure that I got in 2 to 4 hours a day minimum, okay? In that entire time that I did all that, it was socially acceptable with a lot of the groups that I was in. Many of the other girls were doing the same thing. We exercised so we could have the life that we wanted to, and that was acceptable. And then one of my friends was even so meticulous. It was like, look how many low calories. We can eat this whole jar for 25 calories. When we would drink too much, in our 20s and stuff like that. And she lived by that, man. She 100% did. Some of the things that she ate, though, I was like, this is terrible. It tastes disgusting. But anyways, I'd really love to say it's because I developed self-worth, but I don't think it was. I think it's because, you know, in my 20s, through the whole time, it depended on how happy I was, right? So if I was successfully happy and with the boyfriend and we were traveling and doing the thing, I was up 10 pounds. When we were back home and we could be like meticulous to doing all the things and macro counting and stuff like that, because now I'm a dietitian, so I know how to do that. And I was 100% on the macros and exercising, I was down to 10 pounds, but it swing shifted a lot, right? And so I actually got engaged to my long-term boyfriend when I was 27, 28, 29, something like that. I don't remember. And I broke it off. And it was a little bit, maybe like a year and a quarter later when I met my now husband. And it was almost like with the turn of choosing, like I chose, after this one day, I was at a bar with friends. It was December of 2015. And I just had a friend who was like, let's go out and let's do this. Let's watch football. Let's have a great Sunday. I was like, okay, let's do it. And at the end, he went to kiss me. And I was like, I thought we were just hanging as friends. And he was like, no, this was a date. I was like, it was? Like, where was the I'm on a date? I thought we were just hanging out as friends. We've hung out before, right? I don't get it. So that was the last time he even spoke to me. I don't know if it was embarrassment or whatever, but he never spoke another word, defriended me on Facebook. It was like I was legitimately gone. But that night, I was sitting I had just bought a house less than a month and a half ago. And I went home and I was sitting in my bed and I was like, I'm joining Match.com. I'm done with this. And it was really around then that it was like, I am tired of living this way. There has got to be a better way. I'm over 30 and I just want to have a better life. And I really think it was that. And then when I met my boyfriend and I just kind of knew that it was going to wind up serious and we'd wind up getting married, it's almost as easy as that. I cut back on how many classes. Like I was a spin instructor, so that's how I did most of this. I taught most days. I taught 2 to 3 spin classes a day and then worked out 1 to 2 hours on my own. So that's how I maintained it. And it didn't look bad because I was getting paid. It was my job. I was supposed to do this. And on the weekends too. I mean, before I met my boyfriend, before I met my now husband in 2015, I taught 5:45 a.m. spin class every day. And in the evening, I taught 5:30 p.m. class. Sometimes I picked up 6:45 when nobody would. And on the weekends, I taught an aqua class and a spin class and a power pump class. So it was every Saturday and Sunday, I was in the gym for 2 or 3 hours teaching repetitive classes. And nobody viewed it as a negative thing because it was making me subsequent income. So I was checking all of the boxes of my self-worth as needed. Good job, making good money. She looks good. She's got the boyfriends or whatever. I always had a guy. And then I think when I realized how serious it was, like I no longer wanted to spend Monday through Friday working out like crazy. I even changed the way my job worked at the naval hospital where I worked at. I got them to change my shift so I could work 4 10-hour days and have Fridays off. So I'd have even more time with him. And then, yeah, I really think that was the kicker because it's like I got the other box of, oh, I'm going to get married. I am going to have kids. I am going to do that. And so I was able to relax on the excessive exercise. Still was 2 hours a day, which many people would call that. But to me, that was rational. 2 hours is rational because I was at 4, you know?
Now that was 2015, you said? And what does exercising look like for you today?
That's a great question because I'm in the process of changing that again. For the longest time, I started working out every single day when I was 15. So basically when they both told me I was fat, I determined that I was not going to have this. So it wasn't even a month or 2 later when I looked at my mom and I was like, we should wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and walk. And we did. My mom and I did. By 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, when you're supposed to hate your parents, like I was up at 5 a.m. working out with my mom every single day. Right. And yeah, we thoroughly enjoyed that time together. That's when it started. And then when I wasn't getting enough progress is really when I went to, okay, well, then I'll run in the evening. I will add running to my evening schedule. And I've just recently gotten to a point of, is the workout I'm doing actually what my body needs? Or is it that I'm afraid of letting go of this huge commitment? I made at 15. I'm about to be 39. And I don't typically miss. I mean, I was dead sick with strep throat and didn't know it. And I taught my spin class that morning because I knew I couldn't call in. Nobody would show up because you couldn't get a replacement that fast. So I taught it. I went to work. My boss looked at me and was like, "You look terrible. You need to go to a doctor." I got an appointment. She was like, she didn't even really have to do anything. She just looked at my back of my throat and she was like, "You have strep throat, but I have to test you anyways." And yeah, I won't forget that. And so much of that. I mean, I've had 2 babies, 2 C-sections, and I took the bare minimum amount of time as I possibly could because exercise is so much of my life. And even every single day with them, because you're allowed to walk, I would walk with both of my kids. As soon as I got home, I was walking at least a mile a day, or if not more. And so I've really reframed it. Exercise to me now is nurturing my body and being present with it. Because I realized for so long, I'd lift a weight, but I wouldn't even really process what I did because I was, okay, I've got to make sure I get all of this in this period of time to keep this shape, to maintain this. Meanwhile, my body's probably, that hurts. That movement's wrong. You're tired, right? When I personally train people, I would make them do these things, but your own worst patient, right? So exercise to me now is really a nourishing of the soul. I do a little bit of nervous system work every day, a little bit of yoga, depending on the day, really feeling into it, and then determine what kind of workout I'm going to do based on how my body feels after I do the stretching.
So workouts are different day to day for you?
Pretty much. I mean, even today, I completely changed it up. I was like, my body is really telling me to change it up. I could tell when I was 19, right after the eating disorder, that my body really shifted because that was the first time I had ever gotten weight to actually move off my body when I was 18, 19. And so I processed that at 19. When I was 29 is when I started to process that my weight was always shifting based on the life status I was in. And now at 39, having 2 kids, breastfed both of them for such a long time, and now my body is really almost back to mine. They say it's 4 years post breastfeeding. So I have technically 2 more years, but I know that my body changed. I felt a shift recently of what it is asking for. And I think it came from my dad. I don't think I'll ever listen to this, but my dad is an avid worker outer. My dad ran a lot with me. He ran half marathons with me, all the things. My mom has really only walked. She's done some light weights and stuff like that, but she's walked the majority of my life. And we took an awesome vacation in August, my parents, my kids, my husband, and I, to Scandinavia. And there was one day we walked 3 miles and we were discussing if we were going to walk home or if we were going to get a taxi. And my dad was like, "We are taking a taxi." He's like, "I don't want to walk again." And I just processed that, when I get to be in my 60s and 70s, I want to still be able to do it all. So if I'm ignoring my body and really pushing it now, what will happen then? And some of these big bodybuilders have had some of those effects too, where they just literally can't do anything because they ignored the actual pain and the things they needed to pay attention to earlier on.
So where in all of this did you discover Rachel Hollis? Was it anything related to fitness?
Totally. Of course it had to be, right? Yeah. Because my brain has always been around that. The whole reason why I became a dietitian and a personal trainer was because in college, in high school, when I couldn't figure out how to do it, because you name the diet in 2000 to 2004, and I tried it. My mom and I did Weight Watchers. My mom and I did not keto. Back then it was Atkins, right? And we did this weird drink thing and all of the things that you can imagine we did. Hydroxycut, all of those things that were crazy back then. I did them all, to achieve this result. And I mean, now I wouldn't touch anyone with a 10-foot pole, but in 2016, my cousin's wife became a Beachbody coach. And maybe even 2017 is when she was. I don't remember. And obviously, I saw every post that she made because back then, people that I was friends with weren't posting every single day until now when social media is so different after 2020. But I'd see her post and I'd be like, it would bother me to an extent because I'm a dietitian. And sometimes I'm like, why did I get a degree? I could have just been a health coach. But I'm over that now. I think it's wonderful. And there's a place for all dietitians, health coaches, everybody, etc. Right? So I watched her journey, and I wasn't called to be a Beachbody coach, at least at the time. And she started a book club for Rachel Hollis called Girl Wash Your Face, right? Her first book. She's like, we're going to do a book club. We're going to read this book. And I had just had my daughter. My daughter was born in July of 2018. And I had just had her. And I just decided that I was going to read the book. And I remember getting it on Kindle, which is how I read it. And it was Labor Day weekend. And status post having a baby. Things were just all over the place. My husband was going to leave again for his job. I've got this baby. I feel completely different. My life is different. I'm subject to breastfeeding all the time. I just have a completely different life. And I read her book cover to cover in probably 36 hours. And that's really when it began. It was the first book, truthfully, I've probably ever read cover to cover, minus the Babysitter's Club when I was younger. Or I did all of those, the 5 People You Will Meet in Heaven book and Tuesdays with Maury. I read all those, but I was not an avid reader. I totally made up every book report I ever had to do. So it's like, it was not my thing. Give me a book I want to read. Maybe I would, but the books you want me to read and write about, I'm like, hell no, this is so boring. So yeah, it was that book because she spoke so much from a mother perspective, and I needed that.
So what did reading it shift in you? What was one of the first things you say it shifted in you?
I think that I was allowed to be the type of mother that I needed to be. Because Rachel spoke about how she would love going to work, but sometimes she would hate going home. And she spoke about how she would sit at the table dressed up really nice to cut out the little things for her kids for school, but she didn't actually desire to do so. She really just wanted somebody else. And all the other moms looked at her differently because she wore different clothes. And I was neither mom yet, but I just knew I wanted to choose the mom I wanted to be. I didn't want to have to go down the road. When I was in grade school, my best friend's mom was the room mom for all of her kids. And Katie has a bajillion photos from grade school. And she was always in the in club of all the people that hung out at the school. And we weren't. My dad and mom didn't do all the crazy things. They weren't the sporty moms doing everything. They both did the things they needed to do. They both did something for the church. They both did something for us. And that was it. They weren't doing everything versus the other families that were. And when they were doing everything, they were always all together, right? Because they're always coaching somebody or doing something, and that wasn't us. And I was jealous, I think, growing up, because I was like, if my parents would just do that, I'd finally have friends. That was the thing, even though that really wasn't the thing, right? And I'm not mad at my parents at all. But I promised myself I would be that mom. And I now see that I won't be that mom, even though I promised that to myself. That was just a little child thing. And I needed that book to really see that. But on top of that is really when I decided that I was going to be a Beachbody coach. But it did take me a month later before I decided to do it, because I wanted to try the entrepreneur thing. When I was in college, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew it as soon as I took my first nutrition class and they started talking about the different things we could do. Not one part of me said I want to work in a hospital or I want to work in a nursing home or anything like that. I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs that started. And back then it was completely Facebook was brand new. Literally, I got a Facebook account like 2 months after it went as big as it did. And you had to have the .edu address. And I only got it because my boyfriend at the time was like, you have to do this. So I have literally been on Facebook more years of my life than I have been alive. So it's like 22 years or something. Obviously, I have more years with Facebook than without Facebook is what I'm trying to get at. And yeah, I remember that. And I remember when the news feed came out and all that kind of stuff. But this was different. It was almost like that. It was that I'm going to be the person in my family that does this yet again, and probably is the black sheep again of I'm going to make money from the internet. You're going to do, what are you going to do, right? I'm going to make money helping people in this way. And it was frowned upon, but I had a box checked. I was married with a husband who had a stable job versus when I was in my 20s, I was told you need to get a job, you need to get insurance, you need to get off ours, and you need to get stable. And that in no way was an entrepreneur. So I didn't even know how to do it or even voice that I should. And so I think she really helps me to see that I could have a different voice and a different decision in life for myself.
How soon after the book did you go your entrepreneurial journey?
Pretty quick. So that would have been Labor Day weekend. And I'm 90% positive I became a Beachbody coach probably right after my birthday in 2018. So it would have been like a month and a half, maybe 2 months. But it was probably 4 days after I read the book that I texted my cousin's wife and was like, I think I'm going to do this. And then it just took some coercing of me being accepting of it and choosing to do it. And yeah, I knew Beachbody wasn't it for life though. When I started it, it just really helped me to open up and learn some of the beginning grounds. And I did amazing in it at first. But the reason is because everybody wanted to work with me because I was a dietitian, so I could help them with nutrition on top of it. But I couldn't build the business because nobody wanted to coach. They just wanted me. And to build in Beachbody back then, not today, you had to build. So
how long did you do Beachbody for?
technically, I'm still a coach today because I was high enough ranked when I stopped coaching that they kept me in. However, now Beachbody has changed and they no longer do the pyramid way they did before. Not pyramid scheme because it's not a scheme, but they're only doing referral links, affiliate links now, I believe. I don't know when that kicks in because I'm not avidly a Beachbody coach. But when people ask me for a plan, for the workout plan, sometimes I'll say, honestly, here's a link, go get Beachbody. Those things will help you just as much. And then I'll tell you which programs to start at and advance to. And I help them curtail instead of, just follow them. Sometimes they're doing multiple different programs based on their body needs and stuff like that. Because I help them determine on the days that you're not feeling so good, this is a better workout, etc. Right? So I get a little more picky and choosy, but that allows them to do that and to not just have me doing a workout with this in the background, no volume, no entertainment. People get bored. So they at least have that with the Beachbody piece. But in 2000, so I was really good at it. In 2019, I started to feel, in 2018, I had our daughter and I was still working at the Naval Hospital when I decided to become a Beachbody coach. And that was really easy. But in March of 2019, my boss and I were just not getting along. And I was starting to feel like I was having to choose between being a good worker or being a good mom. And there was quite a few things that broke me down to leaving my job. I got a different job working from home that through different means, which I'm not allowed to say, I was released from that job. I looked for some part-time jobs, but every part-time job wanted me to get a shot. They wanted me to get a measles booster. And the measles booster at the time was recommended that you don't get pregnant for 3 to 6 months. And I refused to do it because I knew we wanted to have another baby within that time frame. So I was up. I had received 2 or 3 jobs, but then they wanted me to get this shot. And so I was like, forget it. I might as well just go be an entrepreneur. I might as well just go do this. I might as well do the thing. And it wasn't even 1 week after I did that I made a post on my homeowners association page. I'm a dietitian and a personal trainer who wants some help. And I was making $2,000 a week just from one thing. Now that eventually had to change because it was like, as my dad would say, beginner's luck, more so me believing in myself. And then, I brought in all of my childhood into my business. And it's like it all built up and then kind of fell. And now I'm seeing how I made my business my childhood. And I'm growing from there.
What do you mean by you made your business your childhood?
So in my childhood, I worked to fit in everywhere I went, right? It didn't take me long. The moment I decided to be a Beachbody coach, I did amazing. But then as I was a Beachbody coach and there was more competition and you had to get into all the people, and then it was, this is your downline, this is your upline, this is how you do it, this is how we do it. I'm now having to fit into a box again of, okay, I have to fit in with these people and I have to do these things and I have to say these things and I have to sell these things. Well, I don't know how to do that because I don't want people to take massive amounts of supplements. That's not what I do. So now I have to learn how they say it to try to sell it. So now I'm making my voice in my world sound like them. And then when I became an entrepreneur of my own, that ad did amazing. But like I said, things started to change because literally the 4 people that hired me, 3 of them moved. Their jobs moved them within 3 months. So then I decided, well, if I could do it this easy, let's go online. And so I started with ads and I did a couple of other things and I hired the wrong coach first, who basically told me when 2020 hit that I needed to get out of my business. I'd never make any money. He thankfully gave me some of my money back, hired a different coach, and really kind of catered to his box, but had my own voice. I was starting to understand. And then in November of 2020, I said to Sean, I was like, I don't need any more things on the outside of me. It is all in here. I know it's all in here. That's what's stopping me. And you would think I would be smart enough to continue down that road. And I did, but I dabbled in everything. I had so many coaches. You could ask me how to write a different post. I was a great student and a great person that became who I needed to be to fit in your box. So I looked great to every coach. Every coach loved me because I did the thing. And it was always like, well, if you would do what Leslie would do, then you'd be there. But I wasn't any further because it wasn't me. It was them. I was only doing what they told me. So I turned my business into them. Whoever was my coach, it didn't matter, who it was or what group I was in, because each coaching program comes with its set of coaching students. And so now you're in their bucket. And I see that. I actually have ceased all coaches at the moment. And I have some people that are like, you should continue on. And I was like, no, I shouldn't. Because if I'm a student, every other person's problem becomes mine. I won't take another coaching program or group program or anything like that until I'm definitive to know what's actually mine and not. Because I take it all on. And the last coaching program I had that, I was like, every single person that is talking about this, I'm like, yep, I got that. I got that. I got that. So all I'm doing is looking at the dirty laundry bag instead of all the gifts I have to give and the value I can provide and who I really am and my authentic voice, which is exactly what I did when I was a child.
Wow. That's powerful that you're recognizing that, though.
Yeah, trust me. It was a pretty big slap in the face of, wow. And so what's funny is that I haven't recreated it with my husband or my children, and I'm not letting that happen to them. So I'm letting them have the voice that they want, I'm really truthfully just, okay, you want to do this? We're going to do this. I might think it's the weirdest thing in my life. I might not enjoy it, but I'm going to do this because I want you to know that you get to be yourself and that there's absolutely no reason why you have to be anybody else.
That's amazing. So must have been a tough realization for you to come to.
Totally. I mean, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And I hate that line. I seriously hate that line. Every time somebody says it,
I have a love-hate relationship with it.
No, I'm like, please don't use this line. I truthfully get it. But I started to see it in everything. It took me a little while. But it's also why I was just voicing this with a friend today. I don't play to win, but I also don't play to lose. I tried to wind up in the middle for fear of what winning will cause me to lose or of what losing will cause me to lose. Because as a child, that's how I had to do it. I couldn't be too good because I could offend a sister. Okay. So I couldn't be too good because I still wanted them to like me. And when I did win and I came out ahead, it wasn't a good for you kind of thing. And I think really the same with my friends, which is why I stayed that way. But if I was a loser, then I was ridiculed, right? I was 100% ridiculed of my little things. Like when I had pink eye from a friend, they would call me the Terminator. You're the loser. You're the one at the bottom. And they called me the Terminator for probably a good 2 years of my life. And it wasn't even my fault. It was literally because my best friend didn't wash her hands and shoved her hand into my eye. So anyways, neither here nor there, but those things, it was like I couldn't be a loser. So I actually just made a post on this yesterday or 2 days ago. I have never won first place in anything. No team sport, nothing. I've never won first place. But I've also never come in last. I've always gotten a ribbon, Could be third, it could be second, but I've never won first and I've never been last. And I'm noticing that I'm playing that way in life now, right? I'm playing that way in life. And so I love it. To me, I love to find this out and to see that awareness, to be like, wow, okay, so how do we change it? But that's new because 6 months ago, I would have told you it was from shame and guilt, right? I would have held myself like, if I would have figured this out 6 months ago, I literally would have been like, God, you're an awful person. Like, shame and guilt ruled my life for the majority because of my 7 to 8-year-old self who learned that I was still a sinner. So I then punished myself because I couldn't voice out loud, you gave me this and I feel no different, for fear that the priest would have judged me, my parents would have judged me, my friends would have judged me, my teacher would have, screamed at me and been like, she's still a sinner. I had no idea. So I never shared. So everything really up until maybe 6 months ago that I did in the majority of my life was so I wouldn't feel shame or guilt from someone else, that it was all internal to keep me all there, not in a group, not feeling connected, not having those people, always being a little on the outside, right? So it's just a pattern, and it's awesome to catch it and to no longer give yourself grief for it and just move on from it.
Yeah, it really is. Now, I'd love to transition a little bit. I saw a post you had made, this was a while back, but on your Instagram, and I loved the quote. And I've got a weight loss fitness journey. I lost and maintained a 70-pound weight loss, and it just really thank you. I really resonated with this because always overweight growing up, and everybody's, what'd you do? How'd you do it? And he posted this quote, do you wear other people's underwear? No. Then don't wear someone else's diet. I loved that because what works for somebody isn't necessarily going to work for somebody else. Like you might be able to take on some of what somebody else did, but we're all different. I'd love if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the core of what I teach in Digestion Codes, is that this is also how we're trained from a child, right? We're trained that we don't know when we're supposed to eat or drink. Only a baby really truthfully gets to know when they eat or drink. And that's if their parent is coherent and provided the information of feed your baby when your baby is hungry. Because Gabor Mate, who's a really big person and advocate for like trauma and how to raise children, he actually spoke about when he was younger and he was raised and things like that. His mom had a journal and wrote in her journal, I know you're hungry, honey, but I'm sorry. The doctor says I can only feed you every 4 hours. So you have to sit there and cry in your own bed. And so there are moments where us as parents are not able to perform for the baby's needs. And that can occur based on a doctor's recommendation or anything, right? So it can start early. But let's say a normal, healthy baby that goes through the processes, who's fed when they need to be fed, and they get changed when they need to be changed, and are loved when they need to be loved, and played with when they need to be played with, and allowed to sleep when they need to sleep. Let's say we have that. That's normal. Everything gets whittled out of us once we become an eater of real food. Because we're told, nope, dinner time's now. You're hungry? Too bad, you wait. Oh, you're hungry at school? Too bad, we don't snack in between meals. Oh, you're thirsty at school? Too bad. When I was growing up, you weren't allowed water in class, right? Nowadays, at least they allow you to have water bottles in class, but to an extent, right? Depending on the school, they might have to have it completely closed when you walk in because they got to make sure it's not vodka in the bottle or something. And other places, you got to watch out for spills and watch out for people being rude to each other and stuff, right? So there's all of that. There's all of that in that. And so eating no longer becomes you. Mom knows when I eat. Dad knows when I eat. The teachers know when I drink. I need to go to the bathroom. The teacher says, no, you just went. Okay, so now I learn I don't even know when I need to release my own bowels, right? So we get ourselves talked out of our own body from an early age. The doctor knows. Everyone outside of me knows my body but me. So the day that we choose that we want to change our body, where do we go for the answers? Out there. The doctor's got to know because mom always took me to a doctor when I was little, when I was sick. So the doctor has my information, or my mom has my information because she's controlled all of my eating, right? And then I go to college and I gain 30 pounds because, mom's not there. So I'm finally eating all the candy and junk food I possibly can. right? Because she's not there to say no. And then I think, okay, well, maybe mom has the answer. And mom says, well, the way you got to do it is you don't eat sugar and you don't drink and you exercise X amount and maybe you listen to mom. But none of those are what's right for your body. Your digestion code is. We're all born with a code that tells us what's best for our body. And it's been suppressed. We are not paying attention. And that's part of our nervous system health too. That's why people can go 6 hours sitting at a computer starving and not notice they're starving, or notice they haven't peed or haven't had water or haven't done any of those things, or be clenching their entire body, right? I'm sending out an email to my list. And then all of a sudden you stop and you're like, wow, why am I so tight? Because you're putting all that in there, right? And that's all parts of the digestion code that I teach to really understand what's happening in your body.
That's so fascinating. Can you explain, like, on a basic level what the digestion codes are?
Yeah, so there's 4 pieces. The first one is what I kind of call your code. It uses a combination of things, but it's like a Myers-Briggs kind of test, right? I use multiple different streams. Most people have heard of Myers-Briggs or human design or something like that. There's some pieces in there that really teach you about your body. Other pieces come into play, your own DNA, your own piece. Like, I really love Bruce Lipton, who stated, our DNA is there on the day we're born, but not every baby is born with cancer. If you have cancer in your genes and you have cancer later in your life, you called on the cancer in your body to be taken out, whether it's through food, exercise, diet, exposure to something, or even an own pattern change in your brain. So we can heal ourselves, right? I love to have that as an avenue. So part of that is in there, truthfully, of your code and determining this. And I always say to people who do this, I do this because if you have children, you can uncover theirs and teach them theirs from an early age. This can help stop eating disorders, body image issues, all these kinds of things, when we can teach kids to be in control of their own body and know. A kid can have empowerment instead of a kid being told, I just don't eat that because my mom says I don't. That's not empowering to a kid. A kid will get ridiculed and so they'll go against you. But if the kid knows, no, I know I don't eat that because I know how that makes me feel in my body, they come from a sense of empowerment and that gives them that, right? Most people, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, we don't have empowerment when it comes to our bodies. We're lifeless. And that's what the digestion code initial piece kind of gives you, is your, like I kind of say, pieces, right? Your DNA pieces that now I know what works best for me. The second piece really is about breaking through your own rules, your limitations, your self-beliefs of, well, I just don't eat that. Is it really that you don't eat ice cream, or were you just taught from your mother that ice cream caused her butt to be big? So now you think that's what's causing your butt to be big because she programmed that into your mind. The third piece is really uncovering where you are not even listening to your body, right? So these are things like, I'm not going to the bathroom when I need to go to the bathroom. I'm not drinking enough water. I'm not eating the foods that my body's asking me to eat, right? All of those pieces. And then through all of those 3 units, you become your own advocate. That's how people find out they have cancer before it's even showing on a test, right? They go to the first doctor, they're like, I have cancer. Doctor's like, all your tests are fine. I don't care. I don't believe it. I'm going to somebody else. And then they do the most obscure test and they're like, oh, you're right. You are in the beginning stages of cancer. That's a person who really knows. I love to quote Will Smith's book from this too. Will Smith wrote a book called Will, and he actually tells the story of conceiving their son with Jada Pinkett, the first son that they had. And I'm pretty sure the son was first. And he was like, basically, we finished. And she was like, I'm pregnant. And he was like, babe, it doesn't happen that fast. But she was right. She was like, I know my body. She literally looked at him and said, don't tell me. I know my body. And she was pregnant. And I'm like, that's impressive. That is a woman who knows her body, truthfully, just knows. I actually have a friend that has a very similar story. She was like, I knew right after. I was like, we're going to have a baby. And it was just like, I love that. That's like a true person that can understand the inner workings of their body. And that's a part of your digestion code, to know that piece.
That is so cool. Wow. And how long have you been doing digestion codes?
Yeah. So really, the pieces kind of come through divine timing and things like that. But really around the time I started, I hit 30 because that was the time I really just decided to start. I decided to go on Match.com and I was like, this is terrible. Like reviewing my life between 29 to 30 and seeing how basically I swing shifted 10 pounds, just give or take the month or the week based on that. I was like, there has to be a better way. So I unconsciously found the digestion codes, which I've termed different things around the time, but now have put it together and really pieced it so people get consistent results and they can just be free, as I like to say, shame and guilt and sacrifice free and just living in your best life.
That's so cool. Now, have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
No.
So he's a motivational speaker. He's an author. He's got a podcast called On Purpose. And he ends his podcast with 2 segments, and I've incorporated them into mine. The first segment is the many sides to us. There's 5 questions, and they need to be answered in 1 word.
Okay.
What is 1 word someone who was meeting you for the first time choose to describe you as?
Outgoing.
What is 1 word someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Loving.
What is 1 word you'd use to describe yourself?
Open.
What is 1 word that if someone didn't like you or agree with your mindset would use to describe you?
Aggressive.
What is 1 word you're embodying right now? Then the second segment is the final 5, and these can be answered in a sentence. What is the best advice you've heard or received?
Best advice is the basis of everything.
Why is that the best?
Because anytime that I've tried to do it all myself, I fail blatantly. But anytime I just have the utmost faith that it's going to happen, I succeed. And really, like in ways that I just go, I never would have figured that one out on my own.
What is the worst advice you've heard or received?
This one comes in the form of really the worst advice I've ever received was basically through somebody thinking they knew how to run my life better than me. So it's more of all of the things of me being accepting for them to take over my life for me and me following it. But I'd say if I had to pinpoint one, it would be my youth minister in high school that told me that my body was not allowed to be touched by me, only by others.
Okay. What is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
I'd probably say getting drunk every day.
If you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone was reading it, what would you want it to say?
Here was a woman who truthfully loved, trusted, had faith, and lived life to the fullest for herself, for her family, and for those she served.
That's beautiful. If you could create 1 law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I want to know why.
Everybody would have to read the book, Think and Grow Rich. Because I think if more people read simple books and really studied them, the world would be a completely different place. But people read to get through a book. Do you remember anything you learned in them, or was it just a book? And I think that's really what it is. It's reading a book to understand. And I think if more people could see that and open to the awareness that we get to be the creator of our life and that we get to do it, our world could be a completely different place.
I completely agree. It's interesting you said how many books, because I've even had guests tell me that they've read X amount of books so far this year. And I'm like, are you telling me this for a reason? And that's good, but can you teach me something from them? Or is this just a number,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a self-worth thing there too, somewhere along the line, how many books you read became a part of your self-identity as well.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it. Do you
Yeah, I had a
have
blast.
any final words for the listeners? No pressure. I just like to leave it to the guest.
I always tell people, go out and find who you really are and really look at what are you basing your self-worth on? And is that really what you choose or is it not? Because I'm constantly looking at that and realizing, oh, yeah, maybe last week I valued that, but this week is really not it. Not that quickly, but really taking the time to evaluate what boxes are you checking? Are you selflessly overachieving? And is it time to just totally embrace yourself for who you are?
So true. I love that. Thank you. And where can the listeners connect with you?
I am Leslie Urbas on most platforms. I'm pretty active on YouTube right now. I pretty much post a video every day or every other day. So Leslie Urbas on YouTube, or my Facebook is my next favorite place I hang out, obviously, since I've been there the majority of my life here now. But my name is Leslie Piala Urbas on there because my maiden name is still in the background, which will be probably changed shortly. So
Sounds good. And I will link all of that in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you guys for tuning in. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.